Well, instead of a football Friday, we're going to have to work with some Saturday action before all the other games start today for the playoffs in the NFL. I wanted to get this out yesterday. I apologize for that. I was just extremely busy the entire week with a lot of editing, so we're going to have to work around all that stuff. We're going to be doing a little bit of a preview this afternoon for Eagles-Rams tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m. down at the Link. And I think the least thing that we need to worry about with all the other stuff and crazy things that have been going around this week, yeah, it's going to snow tomorrow. I think they said around like 4-6 inches or something like that. I still think that's the least of the worries because I don't think the Eagles are going to drop this game to the Los Angeles Rams whatsoever. I think they advance to the NFC Championship game. So we're going to break that down and much more because there's a lot of things that came out this week. So before we get into all of that, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTP Sports. If you are new to the channel, viewed for a little bit, haven't hit that subscribe button yet, I definitely recommend that you do hit that subscribe button. It would do me such a great deal of service with the YouTube algorithm. You can also drop a like. You can also leave a comment in the comment section down below. Love to interact with you guys down there. You can also utilize the code TTP Sports, $20 off your first purchase at SEATGEEK. Now, granted, this might be the last Eagles game down at the Link for this playoff run, so I don't know if it's going to help you with anything there. There's a slight chance they could play in the NFC Championship game, but we're not guaranteeing anything there. But you can use it for anything else, concerts, other sporting events in the city of Philadelphia. Hey, I did some research. Sixers games in the near future, the next month of February, even probably the end of the month of January. Some people are selling tickets for as low as $3, $2, $1. Oh, it's getting bad with the Sixers. Oh, man. But hey, if you utilize that code TTP Sports, maybe it'll do you some good. I don't know how it's going to work with all the jacked up fees, probably with the ticket prices being that low, but hey, you can utilize it. It's a great deal. Don't pass it up. You can also leave a follow at TTP Sports on Instagram and TikTok for as much longer as TikTok's even active in the United States for Reels, Shorts, all that good stuff. So, getting in to the fine business today. Like I said, I wanted to try to get this out yesterday, but I've been doing a lot of editing this week for Brodes, Rush Joyce, Know the Goalie, all that other stuff. So, was very busy, especially yesterday, getting all that stuff out for future use, so wasn't really able to sit down and do this. So we're going to be doing that this afternoon. So basically, the bottom line is I don't expect the Eagles to lose tomorrow. I expect the Eagles to win tomorrow against the Los Angeles Rams. I'm not scared of the Rams whatsoever, even though we've been going through the same exact thing as we did last week with the Packers, with a bunch of national media doubting Jalen Hurts, a bunch of the national media saying, oh, maybe the Rams could come in and upset the Eagles. The Rams are a very dangerous team, blah, 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 blah. And all of that. The Rams are a team of destiny for everything that is going down in Los Angeles with the forest fire, so hopefully everyone is still doing all right over there. But, you know, the Rams, team of destiny, all that stuff they're playing for their city. Is the magic going to run out or anything like that? Maybe they can still utilize it and upset the Eagles. They can go on a deep playoff run. No, I don't expect that whatsoever. I think the Eagles are just that much better than the Los Angeles Rams, and there's a lot of things that factor into it. Yes, of course, the weather is 100% going to be a factor in tomorrow's game, even though I still think if it snows, if it rains, whatever the case is going to be, I still think overall that is an advantage towards the Philadelphia Eagles because one, obviously, they pointed out on Twitter, obviously, when they find these stats out there, when they showcase, like, you know, Matthew Stafford's stats and specific weather and all that, they did that, you know, basically throughout the entire week. So Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford is awful when playing in snow games. He has a 1-8 record. He has a 54.6 completion percentage. He has 11 interceptions, and he has a 76 passer rating in these games, and it is expected to snow in Philadelphia. And Matt Stafford did play in the snow in Philadelphia once before. We all remember the snow game when LaShawn McCoy completely ran all over the Detroit Lions in that Eagles win so many years ago. That was a very entertaining game. Will it be to this extent? Maybe. I have no idea. But when it gets to this type of weather, when it gets to the rain, when it gets to snow, when it gets to these weird playing conditions, what do typically most NFL teams do? They rely on the trenches. They rely on their offensive line. They rely on their running game because, it's more difficult to throw the ball in these type of conditions. Sometimes quarterbacks have trouble seeing through the harsh weather conditions, through heavy rain, through snow. Maybe it just takes up a lot of sight downfield. So you utilize your running backs, you utilize your offensive line to push yourself downfield, to try to get to the end zone, to try to get some field goal positions, to try to score some points there. And obviously, that's 100% in the advantage of the Eagles because this offensive line is dynamic. It's one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. You could say it's the best offensive line in the NFL. You also have the best running back in the NFL. That is no debate. Saquon Barkley, historic season, almost broke the single season rushing record if it wasn't for him, choosing to sit out in certain games. So it's basically going to be that case. If you have to rely on the running game for tomorrow afternoon, I think that's advantage Eagles. And that's not to say because you also a quarterback that can run as well, that you have a threat with his legs as well. And I'm sure Jalen Hurts is going to air it out, try to find a way to get A.J. Brown involved, try to find a way to get Devontae Smith involved. Same thing with Dallas Goedert. They're going to find ways to get Jalen Hurts throwing the ball, letting the ball go through the air, and getting your playmakers some chances to take over the game. But obviously, this game, with the way that the weather is going to be presented, it's most likely going to be dominated in the trenches, and that's where your offensive line, that's where Saquon Barkley takes over. And I'm not scared of the Rams whatsoever. Yes, they've had a good stretch here. They beat a Minnesota team, and they crushed that Minnesota team, but also that Minnesota team was a bunch of frauds because they had Sam Darnold as their quarterback, and Sam Darnold was a complete deer in the headlights. And also, there were so many factors going into that game. The game got moved from LA to Arizona because of all the wildfires that were going on. There were so many heavy emotions with the Los Angeles Rams just playing for their city, and maybe that was their game. Maybe that was the game where all the magic took over, and that was just an incredible moment, an incredible emotional moment right there for the Los Angeles Rams. It's a completely different environment, especially when the Rams are playing a short week because they did play on Monday. So you got a short week technically coming into Philadelphia. You're coming into a very hostile environment in Lincoln Financial Field. Obviously, the weather, which is going to play a major factor into the game. I just don't see where the Rams come in and just completely... I'm not going to say dominate because not many people are saying they're going to dominate the Eagles, but come in and upset and find a way to squeak this one out against Philadelphia. I just don't see that. Now, that's not me downplaying Matthew Stafford because I do believe Matthew Stafford's a very good quarterback in this league. They got very good playmakers with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and all that stuff. Their defense, yes, their defense has been playing a lot better in the recent weeks. Their defense was rated pretty poorly throughout the NFL throughout most of the season, but in the previous few weeks leading up into the playoffs, their defense has been playing a lot better. But I also do think it doesn't tell the full entire story of the teams that they were playing. So if you look at the weeks after the Philadelphia Eagles and the Rams played in LA, where the Eagles completely dominated them on the ground with Saquon Barkley and all that stuff, which is most likely, in my opinion, going to be a repeat of what happens tomorrow. I think that's going to be the case. So after week 12 against the Eagles, the Rams, they pulled off a 5-game winning streak to get themselves above 500 to finish with that 10-7 record. They did lose to Seattle in the final week of the season, but that was when LA wasn't playing any of their starters. So you're mostly looking at this 5-game winning streak after week 12 against Philadelphia. So they had a 21-14 win against the New Orleans Saints to get themselves back to 500. They had basically a brawl between the Buffalo Bills. They ended up squeaking that one out 44-42, and that was basically the rest of their offense for the rest of this winning streak because they beat the San Francisco 49ers 12-6. They beat the New York Jets 19-9, and then they beat the Arizona Cardinals 13-9. And that's really when their offense started to struggle. But then you look at their defense, they're only allowing 9 points, 6 points after that Buffalo Bills game. But when you're looking at the just face value there, yeah, it shows that their defense has been playing a lot better. But you're playing a San Francisco team that's very banged up. A lot of their players are just insanely injured. It's not a fully healthy San Francisco squad. And then you can also point to the fact that your offense struggled as well, so it's not really that impressive. Against the New York Jets, it's the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, all that stuff. They're just a dumpster fire of an organization, and you only put up 19 points against that team, and it's not really impressive against the New York Jets to only allow 9 points, in my personal opinion. Same thing with the Arizona Cardinals. They're a mediocre style team, and you barely scored any points against them, too. You only put up 13 points, 9 points. It's really not that impressive whatsoever. And like I said, yes, their defense has been playing a lot better, but it just, if you look at the context, you look at the details, you're not playing that many, I would say, impressive teams. Like basically the most impressive win that they have during this entire winning streak was that just absolute shootout with the Bills. And that is an impressive win 100%, winning 44-42. But I just don't see it. I just don't see this defense finding a way to shut down the Eagles' offense. I just don't see it whatsoever. When the Eagles went into L.A., went into that environment, even though the environment is basically Philadelphia fans taking over the stadium in L.A., but the Eagles completely ran all over them. That is 100% the fact. Seriously, if we just look at that game once again, look at the stats, look at the box score, look what happened. Saquon Barkley, 26 carries, 255 yards. Impressive stuff. He had 4 receptions for 47 yards. So he had almost 300 yards combined on the ground and in the air. It's just absolutely insane. So they completely just took over. A.J. Brown, he had 109 yards in that game on 6 receptions. And the Eagles, they were playing with some guys on the injured list as well. I don't think Devontae Smith was still playing this game. I think he was still out with the concussion and all that. So you were missing some people in this game. I think Jordan Mailata was injured. You were missing some guys on the defensive side. So even you dominated the Rams in that game, and you still weren't fully healthy. Now you got a majority healthy Eagles squad. I don't see how the Rams come in here and upset the Eagles. I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. I think that's just the fact. And the weather, it's going to be a weird thing for both teams. But like I said, when the weather comes crazy and you have to rely on your game in the trenches, you have to rely on your offensive front, your defensive front, your running back and all that, I think that's where the advantage completely goes into the favor of the Eagles. Now, yes, Jalen Hurts has to deal with the weather too. It's not just a Matthew Stafford thing. But like I said, I just think there's more in the advantage of the Eagles, even when they have to play in this type of weather. I just think the offensive line and Saquon Barkley take over the game in that fact, like they did when they played against the Rams in L.A. Hell, the first play of the second half in that game, Saquon took it to the house. First play, ran it for, I believe it was 60-plus yards. So why can't that happen again? Who's to say? Who's to say? But now, I also want to get into some other things here because there's a lot, big article that came out with Tim McManus on ESPN. It's a great article, actually, talking about, the relationship with Nick Sirianni and this team. It's a very, very heartwarming article, and it's completely the opposite of the article that came out during the offseason with all the turmoil that was happening with Nick Sirianni inside and behind the scenes and all that stuff, which was completely warranted, by the way. But now this is showcasing all the positive stuff with Nick Sirianni, how the relationship between the players, how it's just a complete family environment, how he treats everybody. He's sending letters to specific players, and it's just completely great stuff. Him and Jalen Hurts having discussions on the best way to get this offense churning, the best way to play the game to get the wins and all that. So I do want to go over it, and I think the one that stands out the most is obviously the letters that Nick Sirianni sent out to a couple of players throughout this process of the season. So if we get to this article here on Tim McManus, you can see it on ESPN. So if you want to go on ESPN and read this, it's right there for you. So let's get to the letter portion of it. So one of the handwritten letters Mailata received from Sirianni sits in his locker at the NovaCare complex. It came after Mailata was voted captain by his peers for the first time this season, a major point of pride for the former Aussie rugby player who knew next to nothing about football when he was drafted in the 7th round in 2018 and has since developed into one of the best left tackles in the NFL. It just detailed how I've earned it and how no one can take that away from me. The way I lead, the way I practice, the way that I am in the locker room, Mailata said. It was pretty cool. Quarterback Isaiah Rodgers received his before his first started with the Eagles against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And also, this is coming to when Isaiah Rodgers was suspended for all the gambling stuff with the Colts. So Rodgers was suspended for the entire 23 season for violating the league's policy on gambling. His opportunity to start for the first time since December of 22 came when Darius Slay was ruled out with an injury against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Rodgers said he packed the letter in his travel bag and he reads it before every single game. The notes aren't just generated, something that you just find motivational. He said it's real personal, like he wrote it from the heart. Linebacker Nakobe Dean's letter was delivered by an assistant coach in late October before the Cincinnati Bengals game. Sirianni expressed how proud he was of Dean from coming back from multiple injuries to establish himself as an impact starter and encouraged him to continue the climb. I don't know no NFL coaches doing that, Dean said of the letters. When it comes to being for your young players and having the utmost confidence and respect for your players, I think Nick Sirianni is second to none. In a sad twist of fate, Dean tore his patellar tendon in his left knee during Sunday's wildcard playoff win over the Green Bay Packers and will miss the remainder of the playoffs. Some players have entrusted Sirianni with the most sensitive of issues. Sirianni and Lovato were having a conversation about family and children one day earlier last season when Lovato revealed that he and his wife Jordan were struggling with fertility. Sirianni shared that someone he was close to was also going through it, and that led to weekly check-ins from Sirianni to make sure that the Lovatos were doing okay. He was one of the first ones I told. We went through the IVF and found out we were pregnant, and he was just incredibly excited for us, Rick Lovato said. It's so great to have a coach that cares that deeply about your family and not just you and football. The Lovatos announced their birth of their son Freddie in October. Defensive tackle Milton Williams isn't sure how Sirianni found out about that his mom had breast cancer, but that led to their connection as Sirianni shared difficulties of watching his dad Fran battle cancer multiple times throughout his life, including when Nick Sirianni was a child. We talked on the phone. I came up to his office. We talked about everything, Williams said. He was telling me how hard it was for him with his dad, always being around him. He was an energetic guy, and seeing him have to go through that, it was kind of the same thing seeing my mom having to go through chemo and losing her hair and being tired all the time. It was just getting encouragement from Sirianni and knowing how to deal with certain things. And then it also goes into the relationship with Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, so we can get into that in a little bit here, but that just showcases the man, the human being that is Nick Sirianni and the impact that he has on certain players. He's one of the reasons why Jordan Mailata became one of the best leaders on this team. Like, you don't see Jordan Mailata become a captain. You don't see him become that type of leader that he is in the locker room, possibly without Nick Sirianni's help. And the bond that Nick Sirianni shares with a lot of these players, you don't see that from Isaiah Rodgers, who, when he comes in for Darius Slay, can possibly make an impact. You don't see that with Nakobe Dean, who, like Tim McManus said, has dealt with multiple injuries, and this was the year that he finally was fully able to establish himself. With Milton Williams, with Lovato and all of that stuff, it's just the human being that is Nick Sirianni. I think we can all talk about, the X's and O's and the way that he is about the coach and all the way that he was, ran the offense. Maybe he's not the best type of schematic type of person, schematic type of coach and all of that stuff. But the human being, the connection, just the CEO type of coach, the way that he is able to bring this locker room together, able to bring this family type atmosphere into the Eagles locker room, I think it's just second to none. And he's basically just the perfect head coach for this team. The way that, he just brings everybody together, the way that he's able to connect with a lot of people. And there's a lot of NFL coaches out there that are probably just hard asses that don't take the time to connect with their players and all that. So Nick Sirianni takes that time. And yeah, he has a lot of weaknesses as a head coach. This is one of his biggest strengths, is bringing this team together. And the team is in the position, he has a responsibility for that. The team being in the position that they are now, the winning, the multiple winning records, the multiple 14-win seasons that he has had, going on deep playoff runs, possibly getting to another NFC championship game next week. Nick Sirianni deserves credit for a lot of that stuff, and we're seeing that full front right here. And I do want to get to some of the things with the relationship with Jalen Hurts right here. because I do think that's important as well. The relationship that has gotten the most attention is the one between Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. During the offseason, sources detailed a season-long strain between the coach and the quarterback, stemming mostly from the disconnect in the offensive visions. Hurts often gave short, awkward answers to questions about his head coach beginning late last season, foregoing opportunities to deliver a positive message about Sirianni and instead deepening questions about what was happening behind the scenes. His tone changed pretty dramatically after the team's Week 5 bye week. The two had conversations over that time period, hammering out the direction for the offense and team that helped fuel the Eagles' surge, turning a 2-2 start into a 14-3 finish. I'm happy and fortunate that we were able to come together in harmony and have the same goal in mind, trying to get this thing right, Hurts said in October. I got a ton of confidence in him, a ton of confidence in what he brings and everything he's been able to accomplish. One of the sources familiar with Hurts' thinking, who signaled things were off between Hurts and Sirianni around this time last year, told ESPN their relationship is in a better place. Once you learn a person, you learn how to deal with that person, the source said. So it looks like the bond between Sirianni and Jalen Hurts has definitely gotten a lot better. And there's also a lot of things right here talking about the part of Sirianni's leadership style. So, especially with a lot of the stuff with the offensive line, talking about how running with Saquon more, thinking that that's how much more we have to run with the offense. There's a lot of interesting things going on with this article that I want you guys to possibly read for yourselves here. I'm not going to read the entire thing, obviously. So it was just those little 2 sections of this article. It's a great article, by the way. So yeah, I definitely recommend that you guys do check that out for everything, because it's a very great article, just basically dissecting how great of a human being that Nick Sirianni is. So, and he is responsible. He deserves a lot of credit for the team being in the position that they are now. The way that he brings that family atmosphere to this team, it's just completely second to none. And it's nice reading all of these stories on the positive side, because it felt like there was so much negativity last year. And like I said, a lot of that stuff was completely warranted with how the team completely collapsed, everything. It was just crazy. It really was. And this is a complete 180 for that. So when the bad stuff is warranted, you hear about the bad stuff. When the positive stuff is warranted, you hear about a lot of the positive stuff. And that's the position we're in right now, to where we hear a lot about the positive sides of Nick Sirianni. And I think that is very, very, very important. So, and I do want to talk about one thing. Obviously, when you go to the national media standpoint, and it, like I said earlier on, it's basically the same exact things that we heard about last week when coming towards the Green Bay Packers and a lot of the discussions about Jalen Hurts. I do think a lot of the criticism around Jalen Hurts is just getting a little too extreme, getting a little too over the top, to where a lot of it just doesn't make sense, to where it even goes to when, even on the Philadelphia side, the Philadelphia fan side, the media side, and all that stuff, the criticisms around Jalen Hurts, to where it kind of just feels like he's not getting enough credit that he deserves. And yet, has Jalen Hurts been playing the best brand of football? No, I don't think he has been. Obviously, a lot of people want to see Jalen Hurts throw for 300-plus yards, near 400 yards, have 3 touchdowns in the air, all that stuff. Just finding ways to get A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, all that stuff, just implemented it in the offense on a consistent basis. And 100%, there are a lot of better things that could be going around with the passing game. But I think when the opportunity comes arise, the passing game will find a way to break through. When we were complaining a lot about the passing game during, the week before the Pittsburgh Steelers, Jalen Hurts in that passing game went out there and completely dominated. So I think when push comes to shove, basically, I think Jalen Hurts will find a way to get that passing game going. And I also think it's very important to note that even with the passing game not being as spectacular as it is, I still think Jalen Hurts finds ways to get his guys involved. He finds ways to get A.J. Brown involved, even though A.J. Brown needs to be way targeted than he needs to be. Finding a way to get Devontae Smith involved, especially when you get into late game situations. And I think it's also very important to note that even with the passing game not being as spectacular, I know I just completely repeated myself right there, but I think the one thing that needs to be noted that is not really being noted and maybe taking in the full effect is the rate that Jalen Hurts is protecting the football. Because what was one of the major issues during last season's collapse, basically? Jalen Hurts was turning over the football at an extreme rate, something that we were completely not used to. And the one thing that works to Jalen Hurts' strengths, obviously during his 2022 MVP campaign, during that Super Bowl run, was Jalen Hurts not turning the football over. Jalen Hurts protecting the football, keeping it in possession of the Eagles to where they can have long, sustaining drives, and you don't have to put the defense in terrible positions. And at the beginning of the season, it was kind of similar to that fact, to where basically with last season, to where he was turning the football over too much in the first few games before the bye week. And basically since the bye week, that really has not been a problem. Fumbles, interceptions, especially during this playoff run and this back stretch. Jalen Hurts really hasn't turned the football over, and it's keeping the offense out there. It's not putting the defense in terrible positions. It's not doing what he did last season and just trying to completely play hero ball. And I think a lot of the people that want Jalen Hurts, and a lot of that comes from Chase Daniels on Fox Sports 1 and all that stuff. A lot of these other Fox Sports shows, these ESPN shows that really criticize Jalen Hurts and, saying that he's the weak link of this offense because of the way that the passing game is just not going. And it even goes to some Eagles fans at the same time, because for some reason, a lot of people want to see Jalen Hurts just completely air the ball out, consistency, and not just lean on the team's strengths, which is the offensive line, which is Saquon Barkley. Even Jalen Hurts with his legs and just the timely passes that Jalen Hurts can provide, because Jalen Hurts can throw the ball. He can give you a deep ball. He can air it out. He can find people in stride. He can find people downfield to get yourself in good field position. But when people want Jalen Hurts to throw the ball like 30, 40 times in a game, to where, I believe there were people talking about like 50-50 balls and all that stuff. We want to see more 50-50 balls with Jalen Hurts, him airing it out deep more, trying to get these big home run plays to A.J. Brown, getting these home run plays to Devontae Smith. But that's really where you get into a position where you're throwing a lot of interceptions, where you're throwing all these 50-50 balls, and it's not guaranteed that your playmakers make the play. It's just insane. I feel like the criticism for Jalen is just getting a little too extreme. That's just the bottom line. I think he deserves a lot more credit for not turning the ball over and everything there. And I think that's the case. I think turning the ball over, keeping the offense on the field, letting the defense do their thing, not putting them in terrible positions on the field is a big credit to Jalen Hurts, because what was the one thing in the Super Bowl that Jalen Hurts got so much criticism for? Because Jalen Hurts outdueled Pat Mahomes in that Super Bowl. He had fantastic numbers. A lot of yards in the air, a lot of yards on the ground, everything like that. What was the one thing that Jalen Hurts got criticized, which completely overshadowed his entire stat line? The fumble. The fumble recovery for a touchdown for the Chiefs in that first half. Jalen Hurts gets so much criticism for that, which is basically one of the main reasons why maybe the Eagles lost that game, even though there's a lot of other ramifications for why the Eagles lost that game. But a lot of people want to point out the Jalen Hurts fumble in that Super Bowl. If that gets criticized so harshly, then him not turning over the football in this stretch, I think deserves a little bit of praise. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't have him wanting to pass the ball so much and risk turnovers, but when he does turn the ball over, or it's basically he gets criticized for not passing the ball as much and not turning over the football, and then he'll get criticized when he does eventually turn over the football because he's passing it too much. That's basically what I'm trying to get around here. You really can't have it both ways. I think he deserves praise for not turning the ball over and keeping the ball in possession of the Eagles. That's just how I see it. So, in terms of tomorrow, Eagles win. That's all I get for that standpoint. I think it's completely obvious in my personal opinion. I don't think the Rams are as good. I don't think they're that good of a team, even though they do have Sean McVay, a wizard with the offense, Matthew Stafford, really good quarterback. They got two good receivers with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I just don't think they're going to have enough. I think this Eagles defense is going to make Matthew Stafford's life a living nightmare. And obviously the weather is going to have some type of ramifications on both teams. But even though I still do think it has advantage towards Eagles with the run game and the offensive line, I just completely see that as the case. So before we end it off here, do have some voicemails on the Anytime Hotline. One voicemail from Sean. Want to get to that before we end it off here. So let's get to that, and then we'll end it off.
All right, let's break this one down. First of all, I don't think the Eagles or any team in the playoffs needs any more motivation. But thank you, Jared Verse, for being a dumbass. Antagonizing the Eagle fan when coming into Lincoln Financial Field is like taking a bat to a hornet's nest. These people eat their young. You don't want to piss them off any more than they already are. Secondly, as for the game, I do think weather is going to play a factor here. I just don't see either side getting a lot done as far as deep passing of the ball. I think whoever runs the football the best and most importantly protects the football in those elements is probably going to win. I mean, special teams could be key. You can't have Jake Elliott when lining up for like a 20-yard field goal missing it. Any opportunity you have to get points, take it. But, again, I think the weather will play a factor in this one. Third and final, I go back to a quote that Troy Aikman made on a broadcast years ago. The NFL isn't as much about X's and O's as it is about Jimmys and Joes. And while I respect Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, etc., I just think the Eagles have the more talented rosters up, down, and all around. So I'll go Eagles 20, Rams 10.
I like it. And yeah, I do agree with the weather. Obviously, that's going to play a major impact. And I completely forgot about the Jared Verse. I completely forgot about those comments because that's how irrelevant it is. Dude, you're complaining about the Eagles fans when they took over your stadium in Los Angeles and how annoying that the Eagles fans are. It's what Sean said. You're taking a baseball bat to a hornet's nest. You're going into the link where it's going to be a completely hostile environment. And now that Eagles fans have bulletin board material, they're going to make your life a living hell. They're going to shout down your throat. It's just like, what is the purpose of that? It just doesn't make sense. It's like when Cutter Gauthier gave the Flyers fans all that bulletin board material, and we all saw how that played out. Honestly, maybe this gives the Eagles bulletin board material. Oh, we're going to make your life a living hell. You're talking trash about our fan base? No. We're not going to let that slip by. We're going to destroy you. Maybe that could be an impact on the game. Who knows? Who knows? I completely forgot about that because it's just so irrelevant. My God. Like I said, I completely forgot about that. Crazy things, boys. Crazy things. So that's going to do it for today. I don't think I'm going to have any shorts out today just because it's like tomorrow directly is the case going into the game. So I'll probably save the shorts for tomorrow. So we'll just have this video out for today for you guys and all of that good stuff. So what are your thoughts? So don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It does me a great deal of service. And also use the code TTPSPORTS. $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. Don't forget to use that. Great deal. Don't pass it up. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Like I said, I apologize for not doing anything during the week. Just getting crazy busy with the editing. Still figuring out the balancing process and all that stuff. So we'll get into a consistency field here. I promise you that. And without that, I'll see you guys next time. Basically tomorrow after the game.